Hi guys, it's Chad here. I figured I'd try something a bit different today as opposed to just uploading a video and putting it on YouTube. I figured that I'd just try go through a tutorial. It's been 2 years since I first uploaded this piece and it's been by far the most viewed video in my channel. I think it's reached almost 8,000 views, which is more than 8 times what I expected. So this is basically as a thank you to all the subscribers and the viewers. Thank you for your support. I first heard this piece quite a number of years ago, and I think it will be about 6 or 7 years ago, and I spent about 4 years trying to find out the piece's name, and I basically got told by a friend that there was a software which could identify this piece, and of course I was pretty annoyed whenever I found out, but I think it was probably best that I found out then because I wouldn't have been able to play this. So yeah, onto the piece now. The great thing about this piece is, well, obviously it sounds nice. It's great because you can actually play it in a very small, well, fairly small keyboard. You see where this metronome is? From this E to the A that this yellow pencil is on, that's actually the size of keyboard that you will need to play this piece. If you play it as it's written, and if you decide to push the melody up an octave, then up to this silver pen. So yeah, if you've got a 64 key keyboard, then great, you can play this piece easily, no problem. And even if it's a bit smaller than that, then it really shouldn't be too much of a problem. And yeah, I think there's actually been a tutorial uploaded on this piece, except it actually only covers the intro. I think the uploader was going to do it all in chunks, but maybe those videos got deleted, or he just didn't have time to do that. So I hope that for those of you who are looking for a tutorial on Radical Dreamers and the piano, that this video is of help. Basically what I'll do is I'll go over areas which I struggled in, but actually I'll go over the whole piece, but I'll concentrate on the areas that I struggled in and how I got past them. So I hope that's of help, and I know that not everything I say will be helpful in this video because we're all different pianists at different stages, but I would say that if you're at an intermediate level, yeah, go for it. It's not actually too difficult once you learn how to play the left hand, which is by far the trickiest thing in this piece. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so getting into the tutorial itself, as with every piece, you should have a sort of set tempo that you want to achieve. In the official recording with the guitar, accompaniment and the voice, the tempo is actually 146 beats per minute. So set that as a rough guide as to whereabouts you want to go, and like it would sound something like this sort of pace. So you get the rough idea. Personally, I play it a bit quicker. From as far as I'm aware, it's about 150, 155 beats per minute. So yeah, just make your mind up about a tempo. Well, a rough tempo, just the ballpark figure, because your feelings change about pieces after you've completed them. So yeah, that's the first thing. Second thing is, well, onto the intro basically. The intro spans from bars 1 to 16, and it's pretty simple actually. There's probably one thing that I would keep note of, but whenever starting with the intro, I would recommend you actually start with playing with both hands. So you're doing something like reason for this is just so that you get a rough gist of how it should feel to play. But I wouldn't recommend you do this for too long, otherwise you'll get into the habit of it. And the reason I say this is because I am doing the tutorial on how to play the piece with the melody an octave higher, because that's my personal preference. Although if you want to play it as it's written, then feel free, go ahead. Both ways have their pros and cons. I mean, I would say that arguably playing the piece an octave higher makes it sound nicer, but at the same time it's pretty difficult. Whilst if you play it an octave lower, at times it can be easier because you don't have to jump as much. But also musically, you get more more of a sustain, if you, especially towards the harmonizing part at the bridge, which is the ending. So that. As opposed to. So you get a much deeper sound. So those are two things to take into consideration whenever you're deciding what way you're going to play this. Okay, now down to the actual tutorial itself. What I would recommend you do is actually learn the bass, learn how the bass notes go. So that will come hand in hand with playing it, with both playing the bass with playing the accompaniment with both hands. So you've got. So you get a rough idea of this sort of same pattern. But also you learn the bass whilst doing it. That's one of the reasons why it's such a good thing. I feel that if you know the bass, then you're less likely to make mistakes. And even if you do make mistakes, as long as you get the bass note right, then generally speaking it should sound fine. So let's say you're performing in a sort of, I don't know, an end of year concert, then you want to hit the bass notes and everything should fall into place if you've done enough practice. Second point is to practice really slow to start off with, because some people will try to rush this, and the problem with rushing this is that at times you tend to speed up and slow down. I mean, speeding up and slowing down is not a problem. It's just the thing is if you do it irregularly and it doesn't make musical sense, sometimes it's because you've rushed through the piece and the harder parts you're playing slightly slower, or you're playing too quickly just to try skim through it to hide your mistakes. What I would recommend is just taking a slow approach. So but I'm not going to bore you by playing slow because I feel that it's not very productive if a tutorial is just me playing a piece very slow. So yeah, that's that. And also, just to get onto the pedal, I would recommend you change pedal every time you change bass note, although there are some situations where you where the bass note isn't actually a crotchet, it's actually a quaver, in which case I would recommend you actually hold down the pedal for that bass note change. But the thing is, I would never put down the pedal fully whenever playing this piece, because the problem is sometimes it smudges. So I would actually only try use half pedal for this whole piece, because you get a nice clear trim and not so much smudging in the bass, but you still get a good sustain. Whenever your whenever your bass note changes but you decide not to change pedal, I would recommend using about a quarter pedal. You know, think some people, someone told me it's almost like using chauffeur toes. So just little increments. If you're doing driving lessons in the UK, let's say, I think normally driving instructors tell you about a pound coin thickness added on. Yeah, basically just have that slight fine control on your pedal. And yeah, that's basically the intro, and I'll just play through the intro and I'll pick on the 2 bars I think that are the most difficult. So the 2 bars I find most difficult in the intro are bars 3 and 4. It's where you do, it's the first biggish jump in the piece. So you're jumping all over the place. How I would tackle this is, like I said, hand separately. But also there's a small exercise you can do. What it involves is just shortening this distance between the jump, right? So let's say you go for C sharp. So just get used to lifting your pinky off. The reason I say lift your pinky off is because you're actually jumping from here back into your pinky, so that you get used to sort of that movement and back to the bass note. And then you increase it. Increase it even more until you can get to this point, right? And don't just stop at that point. I would actually go beyond that until you can sort of, let's say I would reach B at the very furthest. Otherwise, it would just be miles far. But you can do that if you want for fun. If you can do that fairly regularly, then you know that this part is going to be really easy for you. What I would actually do is split it up into 2 parts as well. So just before you change the bass note, right, so. Actually, it's quite difficult to do that, but I would do it really slow. And then obviously build up on it. But I would say those are the 2 bars that cause the most problems. Now, you'll see me playing parts of the accompaniment with my right hand. This is because there'll never actually be a point whenever you're playing either that sort of a phrase or you'll have to rush your right hand back up to the top. Yeah. So yeah, that's the intro basically covered. Now we'll move on to the verse 1, which verse 1 and verse 2, which range from bars 17 to 32 and 33 to 48. Now verse 1 and verse 2 are very similar. The only difference really is there's some slight changes in phrase. So here goes. That was verse 1, and now verse 2. Now you'd probably hear a difference between the verses, yes. The major differences that I'd like to point out are, well, for verse 1 you've got same as verse 2. Actually different from verse 2. What happens is the melody goes down from here, whilst in verse 2 it actually goes up from there, so it'll go. Whilst the left hand is similar. And you'll also notice that compared to the intro, the accompaniment is actually very similar. You just get some slight changes, some slight additions, which is in particular this. This is actually really easy to get past, right? So if you think of it as chords, you get 4, and then you get, right? So it goes from E minor to, I think this is F sharp suspend, and then F sharp major. And how I would go by this is just think about those chords like that, and I mean that's easy enough. Just think E triad, except you play it that way, and then for this part I would actually start off like this. Or even just get used to that sort of distance between the pinky and the thumb note. The thing is, you're going to have to jump back and forth as well. But eventually getting to that. Yeah, so something like that. I mean, everyone will find a different preference on how they learn things. The thing is, just play around with whatever you're given on the sheets and just sort of try to make it an exercise almost. Like syncopate it, maybe bunch a couple of notes together and make a chord just to learn it. It's very easy, that part. And yeah, that's probably the main difference in the accompaniment. You get that added bit. Although obviously you get this slight change, which is this, and your right hand should come down here. I mean, it is possible to play all with your left hand, however that is actually really difficult to do. Well, not really difficult, it's just a lot more effort than it's worth. It doesn't really serve any purpose in playing it that way. In that you'll always get your right hand back in place in time anyways, but if you wish to, go for it. I'm not stopping you from doing anything. So I've mentioned the melody goes up instead in verse 2, and also this bridging point between verse 1 and verse 2 changes for the bridging point between verse 2 and and chorus and the first chorus. So instead of going, what it actually does is, it's quite easy as well. One point about these bridging points is that it's fairly easy to neglect them. But I really wouldn't do so, because you can get them mixed up at times. I mean, I don't know if it's just me who has a really bad memory, but I found at the beginning that I was getting mixed up between these bridging points, and the thing is, they all lead to slightly different sort of chords, as you'll see later on. And yeah, what I would actually do is practice them in going from the bridge to the start of the next part. So rather than just playing the bridging part itself and then stopping and then going into the next part, I would actually link them. So let's say for the bridging part between verse 1 and verse 2, how I would practice is that is between verse 2 and the chorus, I'd go. Obviously it's quite tough actually just to get that there in time without practice, because sometimes you'll be your right hand will be hovering and you'll be lost. So you see what I mean? So yeah, practice just again. Just getting that clean, and also lifting up the pedal just before you enter another part of the song is very important. So I think I've covered pretty much what I wanted to cover in verses 1 and verses 2. Chorus 1 is just like this. That leads on to Interlude. The thing, chorus 1 spans from bars 49 to 64, and the thing about the chorus is that you have to make sure that you play the melody out well. One thing I've probably neglected to talk about in the verses is the melody. The melody is very important, however it's not very difficult. Just have to make sure that you keep a singing line by not pedaling too much and not thumping the bass note too much. And also one thing to note about is that note is sustained, right? Which is why I would recommend playing, like obviously sometimes you can't help it, which is where actually the advantage of playing the bridging part between verses 1 and 2 with your left hand alone comes in, because you can hold that note. I've never actually practiced it like that, but if you practice it enough, you'll be able to get that right on the pedal and keep it down. But make sure that you only half pedal, not full pedal like I just did there. And same with this bit, so you can hold it on. Alright, sorry. Lost track. Chorus, yes. The chorus, I would say the main thing to make sure is that the melody sings through really nicely. And make sure you play it as legato as you can. And in terms of the accompaniment, it's very similar again to the first verse and second verse and intro. You just got, I would say this is the only real addition. Again, this is similar to so you get just two different chords. Yeah, it's just a chord progression, and it's just broken chords basically. That's pretty self-explanatory. Hold this note. Similar to the intro, except you add very similar to the intro as well, except instead of they're all just quavers. Alright, so now moving on to that was the interlude between the chorus and the verse 3. So verse 3 is, the interlude was bars 65 to 80, and don't worry about it if you don't quite catch the bar numbers. I'll put them on the description as well, because I've not been 100% clear on them. For verse 3, it's between bars 81 and 96, and how it goes, it's probably more similar to verse 1 than verse 2, but still similar to both, of course. As you can see, it's virtually identical to verse 1. The only difference is the bridging point between the verse and the chorus is, instead of... And actually it's very similar as well, because this is there, right? Whilst this is... So all the notes are actually, from verse 1 are actually, verse 1 bridging point is actually involved in this part as well. Which bridges into the chorus, the second chorus. So yeah, nothing really difficult that I can think of in verse 3 that hasn't already been covered in verses 1 and 2. So on to the chorus 2, which goes, always play the bridging point into the chorus. Can't stress that enough, it's just so that you get used to the big jump here. Well, this is not really a big jump, but it's an instant jump. So you'll probably notice that the main difference is that there isn't a sort of jumpy part, as per se, in this chorus. That's the chorus 1, whilst in chorus 2 it actually goes so it's almost like a roll. It's, in a way, it's actually slightly more difficult because it's not quite like anything that was covered previously. But I find that this part cannot actually be the part that you make the most mistakes on at times. Not because it's the most difficult, it's just because it's slightly different. Ah, dear. So what I would do is just practice the one with the B as a bass note quite a lot, because that's actually easier. And the thing is, once you've got that nailed, all you're really doing is shifting down the bass note. Obviously this stretch can be quite a lot for some people, especially if you've got small hands, but it gets really easy if you can do this one. Then you can almost definitely do this one as well. And same vice versa, if you can do that one, 100% you can do that one as well. So yeah, that's the only real thing worth note, except that it actually goes to E, of the chorus too. And then it goes into the bridge instrumental, which is actually one of the tougher parts of this piece. Well, song, except we're not really singing. So it goes like this. So it's quite tough because you have to you're constantly jumping across this sort of area on the keyboard, and what the best thing to do is actually slow practice, of course, but right, remember the exercise I told you to do. Well, I said that would help with the beginning, the third and fourth bar. Same thing applies. If you actually think about it, that's really similar to, well, it's pretty similar to the beginning because you've got this sort of a jump. Of course, I'd be lying if I said it was just as easy. It's actually quite a bit more difficult because you've got that sort of pivoting point. And what I would say is approach it in a similar fashion. So you can get that right. And then this. And like I said, don't restrain yourself just to hitting that note. Go further than that. It's the same with everything that you do. Always look to improve yourself. It's probably my limit. Sort of, the more you play this piece, the more that you get a sense of where almost the home bass note is. So the first. Just automatically, almost like it's almost like a reflex that you'll be able to return to that note. So yeah, that's how I approach that. Approach it very slowly as well. And also, like I said before, hand separate will help a lot. Right, with that bit. I would say this is perhaps the hardest part of it, and you can split that, yes, right hand and left hand. The problem is it actually comes up whilst your right hand is up here at some point later on in the bridge, which is why I would recommend you play with one hand. I mean, sometimes you'll see me doing that because I get lazy and playing it hands together because it's just much easier. So yeah, I would say just very slow practice with that. Alright, and then as soon as this comes, as soon as you get the bridge right, I would recommend you just take time just to think about the melody line. Well, it might not actually be a melody line, I'm not 100% sure, but it's, you know how it's all harmonies. I would take some time just to play through the singing line that you would have your main singer sing. So now, as you can hear, the piano doesn't always sustain the note the way that you want, because the piano is very different from a singer's voice. So you can't keep a note played with the same sort of volume. So the thing is, sometimes you will have to repeat that singing note. I mean, you might think, oh, well, that's just not quite like it. But the thing is, it makes more musical sense if you're transcribing it into a piano, just because you can't sustain that note for that long. So yeah, after you play through the melody, the main line, that's whenever you add in the harmonizing parts. And the thing I would say is that, I mean, you have to play the main line louder than the harmonizing lines, which is obvious. So you can't play it like, I mean, you can, but it's just not quite as, doesn't quite have the almost serene-like effect that I think the composer was looking for at this point. So what I would actually do is almost play the main line just before the harmonizing line, right? So you get, actually it is a fraction before. Obviously with that, I'm just doing that for effects. You may choose to do that instead. Alright, so if you play it like that, and then you play it like you're plonking both the harmonizing line and the main line, harmonizing lines, sorry, there's more than one, then you'll actually hear quite a big difference in the terms of the sound quality. And it just depends on what you're trying to get from it musically. I mean, maybe playing them both at the same sort of volume is what attracts you, so if it is, then go ahead and do it. Yeah, so the bridge, I will play through it once for you. So I got carried away and played the ending as well. But yeah, the bridge, the instrumental, bridge instrumental goes from 113 to 120. The bridge goes from 121 to 144 and 145, and then ending goes from 145 to 159. And the main thing about the bridge is just to take it really slow to start off with, right? It takes a while to get used to, but once you get used to it, you'll actually feel that it's very manageable. I mean, whenever I first came across this piece, I thought, oh my goodness, this is impossible, how am I going to play it? But it's actually very manageable. And what I would do is just start off hands separately, like I said, pick out the, first I would work on the instrumental, the bridge instrumental, right? And that's left hand only anyways. And then I would work on the voice, the nice sort of almost ethereal-like voices. And then sort of work it in so you'll be like, force of habit. Whenever I play it fully, I forget how to practice it in a way. So you get quite a nice sort of sounding. And I mean, if you feel like playing a very sort of drawn back version of this, what I would actually do is just sort of something along those lines, right? And actually playing the melody along with the bass is another good way to memorize bass. Sorry, this is just for the whole piece in general. I'm not going right back to the beginning again. But yeah, for the whole piece in general, and for any piece in general, a great way of learning the bass is just to play the melody whilst playing just the bass note, or just like sort of an octave at the bass, and playing the chords. So yeah, that basically covers the bridge. I would say that, let's see, what's the most difficult part of the bridge? One of the hard parts of it is actually just getting your right hand back, because it's impossible. I mean, unless you can reach from there to there, from the A to this E. Sometimes you will smudge that note. What I would say you should focus on whenever you're getting back to that, just make sure you know what the next bass note in the left hand is going to be, which is actually just a tone above. And I would focus, the note I would focus on would be, I'd actually focus on getting my thumb there, I think. Yeah, I would focus on getting my thumb there. The thing is, once your thumb gets there, you've already got this sort of almost like a shape. But make sure that this finger is the main one. So that is loudest. Let me think what else. Again, it would help if you learned that very fluently. So that's what happens at the end. And then you get this sort of very nice chord. Obviously, if you want to sort of play a hand separately here, since it's the ending, and you want sort of a slightly more hushed atmosphere, the problem is sometimes the thumb can overhit that note. I would actually recommend you not pedal that last bar and just let it sort of hold. And if you want, after you let go of this note, just put the pedal down. You get sort of a nice sort of resonance. But yeah, I would actually say that for the ending part, which is between bars 145 to 159, the most difficult thing is actually this part. Slowing pace to slow down to, and then this part is actually quite difficult. Because sometimes you're going too quick and you sort of mess it up. Sometimes you're going far too slow and then it just sounds really slow, and then you have to slow down the ending, which doesn't sound quite as nice as just sort of like. And it says in the sheets that, if you take it really slow, then that's sort of the effect you're looking for. And it has the rubato signs over there. I mean, I know it says RIT over here, but I would actually start slowing down a little bit just before that. So yeah, that concludes this tutorial for Radical Dreamers. This was all done in one take because I did multiple sort of takes. I sort of stopped it, and I had microphones as well, and I just felt so claustrophobic because I was just surrounded by two laptops, a mic, and this camera. So yeah, I'm just going to take the audio from the camera alone, and yeah, I hope the audio was good enough, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Special thanks goes to Ryulin, who arranged the sheets. I don't know who he or she is, but if you're watching this, big thank you goes out to you. And if you're looking for sheets, please rewind to the beginning of the video, because there's a small tutorial there on how to find the sheets, and it's very simple, and I would do it, you know. I mean, even if you don't have a printer, perhaps you can go to a library nearby and get it printed out, because having the sheets makes a big difference, so you can annotate them. What I'll actually do is I might scan in the sheets and how I've annotated them. I mean, I've not done much annotating in these because I just printed them out last night, but I will put down the little bars that I would focus on, and yeah, if I've missed anything out, please let me know in the comments, and let me know if this tutorial was good or if it was rubbish. I mean, personally, I think that tutorials which just show you playing the piece very slowly, it's just going to be about 10 minutes of me playing the piano really slow, so I feel it's kind of pointless. But if you want to see that, please do let me know. Sometimes I feel that I do play through too quickly in some pieces, sometimes I'm too slow in some pieces, but please do let me know your views on any of my uploads, and if you want a tutorial to be made on one of them, just comment on the upload and just say, hey, can you make a tutorial of this, and I'll try to get working on it. Can't guarantee it for any time soon, but yeah, give it a shot. So yeah, thanks for watching, and thanks again to all my viewers and subscribers. I mean, it's just amazing how I've managed to get 8,000 views on the Radical Dreamers video I posted up 2 years ago. As I said, it's about eight times more than I would ever have dreamed. So yeah, thank you again, and I'll catch you guys later.